plus years old. It was older. The system, the air conditioning system was older than the technician who was new. Yeah, so last summer, if you recall, right in the, like towards the end of late August, we got this just sudden heat wave, and that's when the air conditioner broke. So they were able to get it up and running again, thank God. But I thought, you know, this is its way of telling me it's time to get replaced. So they basically told me, I said, so if I want to get it replaced, you know, what should I call? They go, call in March because that's when we start scheduling in early May. And all I can tell you is, when I get home on a day like this, I think this is
So you talked about doing maybe 2 years ago. You stopped. And it was to the point where it's 10, 12 years old. Tech was out, it's doing this, and that was out. I mean, because then you still fresh outside.
Yeah.
The fan wasn't spinning. Fan motor. Long screwdriver, push the blade, towards the very end.
Advice.
Something got in there, frozen.
I have a friend whose air conditioning stopped working, and apparently a squirrel had climbed in there, and unfortunately met its end with the fan. So the guy said, you know, there's no damage to the fan. There's no, basically the squirrel's body was blocking the fan, and that's why it wasn't working. But he says, I'm going to have to take some time to clean the unit out.
Yeah.
And because the squirrel had apparently towards the bottom, climbed up.
And you know, too, Rabbi, after Beth's better, I want to get back into reading like 3 verses of Torah.
Great.
I kicked it.
Whenever you feel ready,
I don't know who the race is all.
you can speak either to me or to Ron Brandwine.
And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I finally asked somebody, and they go, oh yeah, we're looking for cats and other animals. Because he said, you don't want to start your car up and hear what you hear when there's like a specific animal sitting on top of your engine.
You know, I've seen articles just this last week, New York Times, or I forgot where, maybe the Consumer Reports, about a lot of people finding rats in their engine bay.
Oh, yeah.
And
So it's an old story.
but it seems to be on the incline again.
What that's about, I thought it's a winter thing that they try to keep warm, but
Well, my conspiracy theory, no. Bill Gates, no. You know how he does this.
no. Who's the target of most conspiracy theories?
5G.
Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton, yeah, she's a big one, but 5G towers.
I mean, she's not perfect, but she's also
Chemtrails.
not responsible for that much stuff.
Bill Gates is trying.
You know, you talk about 5G. I was trying to set up a system, right, get rid of spectrum.
Oh, let me know how it works.
Well,
And
I
they
was
said it
this
got-
close there, right? I was this close. And the problem is I'm too close to the antenna, to the towers. So that I put up an antenna with my computer, and if I take the antenna and move it an inch, one way or the other, the whole reception changes. The cord that's on the antenna, I move that way, one way or the other.
Is the spectrum for TV or for internet access that you're trying to get rid of?
This was a standard antenna that I can hook up to the back of the TV. I don't have to.
Okay, for TV.
Well, it's got a special box that I bought. They plug that into the box, and plug that into your internet, and then it becomes part of a Roku icon. Well, I couldn't get it to work, I'm in contact with the guy that makes this little box, almost on a daily basis. And I finally found out, the Roku does not work at the speeds that you need.
Oh.
You gotta get a fire stick or something.
Yeah. It's always something.
But one of the problems that I have, I'm also close to a cell tower. And that was causing a different problem. To the point point that I couldn't use it at all. So he said, oh,
You got moved.
you gotta have this unit, they hook here and here, and they don't sound. And it did.
It did.
It did.
And now the CIA is listening to your conversations. I'm kidding.
What was that?
The CIA is listening to your conversations now. Oh my goodness. That's Bertie. He's so handsome.
Hi, Donnie, you're back. Shabbat Shalom. Good to see you.
Bertie, you look so handsome. What are you, about 70? I've been watching you on the live stream.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So wonderful. We're so lucky.
I know, it's crazy. I have to tell you, the other day, his car was parked on the street, and he's
I'll get myself
a little wide.
Of course.
Oversized.
Of course.
And both of them. So he's here, and he wants to go there, so he goes, like that, I'm like,
Shane, look at him.
oh, right. That's it, you know,
Put him on punishment.
I was just like,
Or he has to have a curfew and sign out his keys.
yeah, but he's very agile.
Very.
Yep.
He's better than these team bombers. They can't drive.
You take it, or maybe that's
They
why
were
we're doing that.
changing his driving age up because
There is just an Italian
television.
Sorry, I don't know.
They're crazy. And then they want to talk antics and have a, no.
That's right. Yeah, I tried to keep the, what is it, one person and a couple in the car only.
Yes. Less distraction. Very.
So at what time we absolutely need to do that?
Yeah. But minimal distraction, yes. Hey, little kid.
Shabbat Shalom.
Everybody's a little sharp, because they're little like me.
Get stuff done, we'll be right back.
Sounds good.
If you need more,
Thank you.
That's what actually was happening at the temple, boy.
that's good.
You got my note, right, that I sent you?
Listen, I'm very
Said we were canceling, I told you I was glad it was. I didn't miss anything, by trip to San Antonio.
I need to look at it again, quite honestly.
What?
That's all right.
I-
I guess I was hoping for just a response. I need an acknowledgement.
I'll need to look at it again. I'm behind with a lot of emails.
Yeah, it was quite an event, in a good way, trip.
Great, let's talk about it afterwards. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yasar mitzvotav v'tzedakah.
It's gone a little while. That's great. Oh my goodness. At least you love your plant life. Yeah.
And we have neighbors, like I said, there's a really kind woman who.
Shabbat Shalom, good morning, Jack, good to see you. I wasn't, oh, you are here,
Okay.
fabulous.
Okay, bro.
Let us turn to page 102, I believe. No, I'm wrong. 103. Let's turn to page 103. If it's comfortable for you to stand, that's wonderful. And if it's not comfortable, then don't push yourself to the point of discomfort. Page 103. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'bina lehavchin ben yom uben laila. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani betzalmo. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufihim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvurah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael betif'arah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanotein layawef koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ha'avishena amen. ותננו היום ובכל יום, לכנו לחסד ולרחמים בעיניך, ובעיני חורינו ותגמלנו חסדים טובים. ברוך אתה אדוני, גומל חסדים טובים, לעמו ישראל. Let's turn to page 122 for those of you who are standing. If you can continue doing so, great. If not, that is all right. Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam, baruch hu, baruch oseh v'reshit, baruch omer v'oseh, baruch gozer u'mekayem, baruch merachem al ha'aretz, baruch merachem al ha'briot, baruch meshalem sachar tov lireah, baruch ha'elat v'kayam la'netzach, baruch pater matzil, baruch shemo, baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ha'ela av ha'rachaman u'mulav v'yam. נמליכך מלכנו אלוהינו, יחיד חי העולמים, מלך משובח ומפואר עדי עד שמו הגדול, ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך מהולל בתיש בחוד. Let's be seated and turn to page 145. נשמת כל חי תברך את שמך אדוני אלוהינו ברוח ובשר תברך. מתיר הסורים ילופינו מלא שירה כגם ושנה. מצרים גאלתנו וננענו ביד עבדים. כל עצמותיי דומה. את שם קודשך כמון לדוד ברכי, נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו. Page 147 at the first red arrow from the top of the page. שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב רננו צדיקים אדוני לשרים נאווה תהילה. בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תגרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. בעיר פרינה ידבר שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור, שכן חובת כל יצורים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו ואימותינו, להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להלל, לקלס, על כל דברי שירות ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לכן אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו ואימותינו, שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז ממשלה, נצח, גדולה גבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אל חי העולמים. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Keith is here, right?
Somebody's Thomas Peg is on the.
I just heard the door closing. It'll be a matter of seconds till we see who's coming to join us.
Ghost.
A ghost.
Oh, Sid is in the.
Wonderful. Sid is in the hall and headed this way. Let's count him in, seeing as this is clearly his intention. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעולמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ויומכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי הקודשה. בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן ויעלמה ואמרו אמן. Page 149. ברוך הוא את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם יוצר אור ובורא חושך עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. הכל יודוך והכל ישבחוך והכל יאמרו אין קדוש כאדוני הכל יאמרו סלע יוצר הכל. הוציאך מהמקום. אין קרקך ואין זולתך אפס בלתך ומדומה לך. אין קרקך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי עולם הבא. אפס בלתך גואלנו לימות המשיח ואין דומה לך מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון על כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה גודלו וטובו מלא עולם דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו. המתגאה על חיות הקודש ונדר בכבוד על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני חיסו חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו. טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם בדעת בבינה ובהשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל. מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה נאה זיום בכל העולם שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם עוזים באימה רצון קונם. פאר בכבוד נותנים לשמוץ עולה ורינה לזכר מלכותו קרא לשמש ויזרח אור רעה והתקין צורת הלבנה. שבח נותנים לו כל זבח מרום תפארת וגדולה שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים ביום השביעי התעלה וישב על כיסא כבודו. תתברך מושיענו על שבח מעשה ידיך ועל מאורי אור שעשית יברוך סלע. top of page 153. Titbarach tzurenu malkeinu v'gvalenu borei kedoshim. Kulam ahuvim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim, v'kulam osim be'ema uv'yirat tzon gonam, v'kulam potrim et pihem b'kdosha v'tohara. בשירה ובזמרה ומברכים ומשבחים ומפרים ומריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא וכולם מקבלים עליהם על מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה ובנימה קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. ואופנים וחיות הקודש, ברעש גדול מתנסים לעומת צרפים, לעומתם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, לאל ברוך נמות יתנו, אל המלך אל חי וקיים. הנפלאות, המחדש בטובו בכל יום תמיד, מעשה בראשית כאמור, לעושה אורים גדולים, כי לעולם חסדו. אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה, כולנו מהרה לאורו, ברוך אתה אדוני, יוצר המאורות. Top of page 154. אהבה הרבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותירה, חמלת עלינו. אהבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו ואמותינו, שבטחו בך, שבטחו בך. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן כן תכוננו ותלמדנו. אבינו האב הרחמן והמרחם רחם עלינו בתם בליבנו, אבינו להשכיל לשמוע ללמוד ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה וישועתך. והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו קוממיות, קוממיות לארצנו. כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקירבתנו לשמך הגדול. סלע באמת להודות לך ולייחדך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר במו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לו תותפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. והיה עם שמות את שמונים שפתיו שלכם מצוותיכם. לתת להם כמי השמיים על הארץ. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת ויציב ונכון וקיים. אמת אלוהים הדור והדור הוא קיים ושמו קיים וחיזור. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו ואמותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו ואמותינו גואלנו גואלנו. עזרת אבותינו ואמותינו אתה הוא אדוני. תהילות לאל עליון ברוך ומבורך, משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נהורה תהילות עושה הפלא, שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו וימלכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובטחי נאומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך. The repetition of the Amidah is on page 159. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לפני בניהם למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומפקד ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה האדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיי, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה האדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה וימהר. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך על הארץ, כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנסים לאומת צרפים, לאומתם ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור, לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We may be seated and we continue the second paragraph on page 162. ישמח ישמח משה במתנת חלקו, כי עבד נאמן קראת לו, כליל תפארת בראשו נתת, בעומדו לפניך על הר סיני, ושני לוחות אבנים הוריד בידו, וכתוב בהם שמירת שבת, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, בהני ובהן בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ולא נתתו אדוני אלוהינו לכל ירצות ולא הנחלתו, מלכנו לא בתי פסילים, וגם במנוחתו לא ישכנו ערלים. כי לישראל לעמך נתת באהבה, לזרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת. המקדשי שביעי כולם יספעו ויתענגו מטובך, והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, רצה במנוחתנו. קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך. סבנו מטובך, שמחנו בישועתך, וטהר ליבנו ליעבדך באמת. והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה וברצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בה ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל, ותפילתם בשבת עבודה לביתך, ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים. ברוך אתה אדוני המחזי שכינתו לציון. מודים אנחנו לך שאתה הוא אדוני. הטוב כי לא חלו רחמך במרחם, כי לא תמו חסדיך מעולם קיווינו לך. ועל כולם יתברך ויתרומם שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. וכל החיים דו חסלה ויללו את שמך באמת, האל בשעתנו ועזרתנו סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני הטוב שמך לך נאה להודות. Top of page 165. אלוהינו ולאבותינו ואמותינו, ברכנו בברכה מושלשת בתורה הכתובה על ידי משה עבדך, האמורה מפי אהרון ובניו, כהנים עם קודשך כאמור. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך וייחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. שים שלום, שים שלום טובה בעולם וברכה. שים שלום טובה וברכה. חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד ביור פניך. שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם. שים שלום טובה וברכה. כי ביור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו תורת חיים ויהבת חסד, צדקה וברכה ורחמים וחיים ושלום. שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם. שים שלום טובה וברכה. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך, לברך את עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה, בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. Page 167. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברך ירתיו ימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעולמה ואמרו. תתקבל צלותון ובאותון לכל ישראל, קודם אב והונדי ושמיה ואמרו. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו. Amen. Shabbat Shalom, good morning. Welcome to everyone. It's great to see a number of people who've been away, some who are visiting us, some who've been away a long time, and it's great to have you back. Some of you have traveled afar, and welcome back from, was it England or Ireland? England. England. Great. Good to have you. Good to have everyone. Good news to share, and good news only.
No?
Well, you like my tie? Well, okay, thank you, but
I like our shoes.
I like that she's with us. That's for me really a highlight this morning, and exceptionally good news. Really, Hadassah, it's just great to have you, and we hope you intend and are able to come back every week. Let's talk about rides instead of long-distance schlepping from buses and that kind of thing, because that's not necessary. Not necessary. Oh, why don't you tell them it's your anniversary?
I forgot how many years, but I had my 18, the Jewish 9 or 10 years old was today. How many years ago? 9 or 10, but this is the day, obviously.
So Hadassah says that this is either the 9th or the 10th anniversary of her Beit Din, of her meeting before the Beit Din to approve her conversion candidacy, and then her immersion in the mikveh, which I really hope was a beautiful ceremony and a meaningful ceremony. Oh, that's great. Whenever a rabbi in the community calls and says, hey, we need a third rabbi, would you come along and participate? I jump at the opportunity because it's just so lovely. This week I happened to be at the immersion of a toddler, of a 6-month-old, and just very, very special opportunity. Karen, you also just returned from travels, right? Welcome back. Glad to see you're here and got back safely. No other events? There's nothing from my home either that I could think of. Marcy?
Bernie's going to be with us longer than we thought.
Bernie's going to be in Rochester longer than we thought. That's great. I don't know. We'll find out. Stan has good news for us too.
So our youngest son, who started medical school a year ago, never had his white coat ceremony, which is a traditional beginning because of COVID. So they had it this past week. So finally.
Oh, that's great. Where is he studying?
In Clearwater, Florida.
Clearwater, Florida. So you were in Florida this last week.
No, we didn't go. We watched it online.
Okay.
Going to Florida in the summer.
No arguments from me. Although it feels like I'm in Florida this morning, but yeah. Karen.
I just want to say that I had the blessings of 1 week, my one son came with 2 grandkids. And the second week, I got invited to a mini vacation in San Antonio, so it was hot. But it was with the other 3 grandsons who are right now touring the University of Arkansas.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Lovely family reunions and togetherness, and hopefully very joyful. Well, good. Hearing nothing else, let us turn to page 168. אין כמוך ואלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Adonai oz la'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim, heitiva virtzoncha et Zion. Tivne chomot Yerushalayim, Tivne chomot Yerushalayim. Kivecha levad batachnu, melech en ram venisa, Adon olamim. Vayehi b'nsoah Aaron, vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, veyafutzu oivecha, veyanusu misanecha, mi'anecha, ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, udevar Adonai miYerushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah Torah, la'amo Yisrael bi'kedushato. On page 169, let's read together the top paragraph on the left-hand side. A prayer for the day of rest. I long to change the world, but I rarely appreciate things as they are. I know how to give, but I don't always know how to be still. I talk, but I don't often see. I look, but I don't often see. I yearn to succeed, but I often forget what is truly important. Teach me, God, to slow down. May my resting revive me. May it lead me to wisdom, to holiness, to peace, and to you. Velishmei Kadisha, Kadisha Yakira, Ana Emar Tushbechon, Yeherava Kodama, Deti פתח ליבי ויורייתא ותשלים משלים דליבי וליבה דכל עמך ישראל לטב לחיים ולשלם. Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadolula Adonai iti, uneromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai Hagadula Vehagavura Vehatiferet Vehanetzach Vehahor Kihol Bashamayim Uva'aretz Lechol Bashamayim Uva'aretz Lecha Adonai Hamamlacha Ve'amitnasei lechol erosh. Romemu, 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 Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Ve'ishtachavu, Le'adon Raglav Kadoshu. Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Ve'ishtachavu, Lehar Kodsho ki kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu. Thank you very much. And if we could exchange that for Nancy's silk covering. Let me just make sure that we have the right place. Oh, it's not in that one. This morning, we begin with our first aliyah in the book of Devarim, hence it's Parashat Devarim. We are in the fifth and final book of the Torah. the book of Deuteronomy, and our reading begins this morning on page 994, hearing no corrections, 994, and that should put us at chapter 2, and we begin at verse number 31. ויעזור ויגן ויושיע לכל החוסים בו ונאמר אמן. הכל אבו גודל אלוהינו תנו כבוד לתורה. כהן במקום לוי קרב. יעמוד כהן לוי במקום כהן קרב. יעמוד לוי במקום כהן. ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל. בקדושתו. ואתם הדבקים באדוני אלוהיכם, חיים כולכם היום. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
תיתן לפניך את סיחון ואת ארצו, החל רש לרשת את ארצו, ויצא סיחון לקראתנו, ובכל עמו למלחמה יצא, ויתנהו אדוני אלוהינו לפנינו, ונחותו ואת בניו ואת כל עמו, ונלכוד את כל הרב בעת ההיא ונרחם את עיר מתים והנשים והטף לא השארנו שריד. Thank you. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם לקח תוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו בתורה.
Amen. Just to point out to those of you who may not be familiar with reading from either end of the Torah, it becomes a little bit tricky because as you get to the end, it's much more tight, and you have the one side trying to roll back of its own accord, so it needs to be held down in place. So I think that's what Stan was trying to assist with, and that's just a typical occurrence, that an occupational hazard that comes with reading from either end of the scroll. The second aliyah is on page 995, and it begins at verse number 35. Ya'amod Levi. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Amen. Rachabehima bozaznu lanu shalal harim asher lakadnu ki meorei asher al safat nachal arnon ve'ir asher banachal v'yara gilad lo ha'takir yam asher savika mimenu et hakol natan Adonai Eloheinu lefaneinu. Rak et kol eretz b'nei Amon lo karafta v'chol yad nachal yabok b'arei ahar v'chol asher tzivah Adonai Eloheinu. Shemo. Amen. Yashar Koach, Sid and Bernie. The third Aliyah continues on page 995, and we are now in chapter 3 at verse number 1. Ya'amod shlishi. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Shemo. Amen.
V'nethan v'na'al derech habasan v'yetze og melech heshbon likrotenu v'chol imo v'milchama edrei v'yomer Adonai Eli el tira Oto ki bidcha natati oto viet ko imo viet arzo lieshet lo liasito lo kaasher asito lesichon melech haemori asher yoshev becheshbon vayitein Adonai Eloheinu badeinu gam et og melech habasan viet kol amo v'nakehu ad bilti ta ha'asir asir lo sarid.
Shemo. Amen. Yashar Koach to Ron and to Keith. The fourth Aliyah is on page 996, and it begins at verse number 4. Ya'amod Revi'i. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Shemo. Amen.
And Kodel Kolarave Tahil Lo Haitakiria Asher Lo Lakachna Meitam Shishim Ir Kol Kevel Argo Mamlachet O Babashan Kol Ele Arim Bitsubrod Cholmab Goboa Delatime Ovariach Levad Me'arei Habrizi Harbe Meod Menacharei Motam Kasher Asinu L'Sichon Melech Habashan
Cheshbon. Melech Cheshbon.
Hachareim Kol Ir Mitim Hanashim V'Hatav V'Chol HaBehema Shalal Ha'arim V'Zonu Lanu.
Say something to me. Yeah, I said
Oh, I'll say it louder next time, but it's okay. Yashar Koach to Ed and to Bernie. We move on now to the fifth Aliyah, and that is also on page 996, and it begins at verse 8. Those of you who were here last week might notice that each reading this week is a lot shorter than they were last week. Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Shemo. Amen.
Amen. Vanikach ba'ed Shnei Malchei HaEmori Asher Be'ever HaYarden Minachal Arnon Ad Har Hermon Tzidonim Yikra'u L'Hermon Sirion V'HaEmori Yikra'u Lo Senir Kol Arei HaMishor V'chal HaGilad V'chal HaBashan Ad Salcha Ve'ederi Arei Mamlechet Og Babashan Ki Rak Og Melech HaBashan Nishar Miyater HaRafaim Hine Arso Eres Barzel
Amod Ish. Shemo. Amen. Yashar Koach to Hadassah and to Cindy. The sixth Aliyah is on page 997, and it begins at verse 12. Number six. Who is number six? Jack is number six. Ya'amod Shishi. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed. Shema. Amen.
Amen. Ve'et ha'aretz hazot yarashnu ba'ed hahi me'aro Asher al Nachal Arnon V'chatzi har Hagilad V'arav Natati la Ruveni V'lagadi V'yeter Hagilad V'chal Habashan Mamlechet Og Natati la Chatzi Shevet HaManashe Kol Chevel Ha'argov L'chol Habashan Hahu Yikare Eretz Raphaim Yair Ben Menashe Lakach Ekol Chevel Argov Agavul Hagashuri V'Hamakati Vayikra Otam Al Shemo Et Habashan Hu Yair Ad Hayom Hazeh.
Shemo. Amen. Yashar Koach to Jack and to Cindy for the sixth Aliyah. Before we call up the seventh Aliyah and read the reading, let us offer blessings of health and well-being and healing and recovery, and as we've said in recent weeks, the blessing even of diagnosis, so that people who know that they're suffering should know what they're suffering with, and begin, let's hope, to be able to make steps forward. Misha Berach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov ve'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim Yitzchak Yosef ben Sarah Elizabeth Crummins Avraham ben Rachel Harav Chana bat Aharon v'Yael Nick Aruda Harriet Driss Mendel Moshe ben David William Stewart Adam ben Fratel, Elishira bat Sarah, Hadassah bat Sarah, Beverly Malowitz, Judy bat Josephine, Abraham ben Tahila, Rebbetzin Chaya Necha bat Riva Leah, Chaya Sora bat Yehudit, Mark Donahue, Yisrael ben Batya, Yaakova Basha bat Leah Dovora, Moshe Arielev Binyamin ben Ruth, Sifra Kala bat Zipporah, Joy McManus, Dovora bat Esther, Jed Salisbury, Stephanie Litvak, Sarah Shandel bat Freda Leah, Miriam bat Shoshana Leah, Laurie Davis, Sarah bat Ben Sion Veshoshana, Betty Ann Robustelli, Chaya Malka bat Chaviva, Judy Schulman, Baruch ben Rivka Gittel, Miriam bat Yehudit Pinchas ben Chava v'Chaim, Sarah bat Dina v'David, Yael bat Devora, Aliza bat Chaya uMordechai, Chava bat Yosef v'Ilona, Michael Stoller, Joe McDonald, Levi Yitzchak ben Rivka, Rafael Chaim ben Yehuda Yaakov, Yitzchak ben Abraham, Chana Leah bat Shira Sivan, Michael Chris, Richie Greco, Ruben Yankel ben Bracha Esther Halevi, Larry Newman, Yeta Yisrael bat Mindel ben Nachum, Tzvi Hirsch ben Frida, Fischel Label ben Leah, Fega Ruchel Faye Ruth Wender, and Lily Sherman. Anyone who would like to add any names, please do. Akadosh Baruch Hu yimale rachamim alehem leachazikam u'lerapotam vayishlach lahem meheira refu'at shlema min hashamayim refu'at hanefesh refu'at haguf betoch sha'ar hacholim vechazek et yedei ha'oskim b'tzorcheihem Shabbat hi melizok u'refu'a krova lavo hashta ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'nomar amen. Just one note further on healing and those in our community who are in need of our support. If you are interested in being asked to make a meal on the odd occasion for someone who might be unwell or even possibly during Shiva or something like that, would you please either let me or Karen Schaefer know? And it would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
What's wrong with Lily, do you know?
Yes, Lily tripped during the week. She tripped over a hose pipe, and she fell and broke her hip, and she's had surgery to repair the hip. And the surgery, from what I understand from her daughter, Sue, the surgery went very well. And Lily either did yesterday or will soon transfer to Jewish Senior Life for rehab. So I saw Lily in the hospital, and she's Lily, which means that she's incredible. And she even looks wonderful. And we hope that she will soon be able, to be back with us where she belongs. The seventh Aliyah. The seventh Aliyah continues on page 997. These really are short ones this morning. And we pick up at verse number 15. Ya'amod ta'amod shvi'it. Baruch Adonai Barach le'olam va'ed. Shmo. Amen.
Amen. Ulmachir natati et hagilad. Bilaroveni ulgadi natati men hagilad v'yad nachal arnon toha nachal ugvul v'yad jaboka nachal ugvul b'nei amon harava v'artein ugvul mikineret v'yad yam harava yam hamelech tachat ashdod habiska mizracha v'tzav etchem be'etahi le'mur Adonai Elohechem natan lachem et haaretz hazot l'rishtam chalotzim tavru lifnei etchem b'nei Yisrael kol b'nei chayil rak neshechem v'tapchem u'miknechem tapchem v'nisnechem yadati ki mikne rav lachem yeshvu be'arechem asher natati lachem ad asher yaniach Adonai Elohechem lachem yrshu gam heim et haaretz asher Adonai Elohechem natan lahem asher Adonai Elohechem natan lahem be'evir har Yordain v'shaftem ish l'rishato asher natati lachem v'et Yeshua tziviti be'etahi le'mor enecha ra'ot et aker asher et kol asher asa Adonai Eloheinu Elohechem l'shnei hamlachim ha'elem ken yaseh Adonai l'chol mamlachot asher ta'over shamam lo tira'um ki Adonai Elohechem hu anilcham lachem. Thanks. Thank you.
Shmo. Amen. Yashar Koach to Karen and to Bernie for the reading of the 7th Aliyah. We turn briefly to our Sidurim on page 174 for the Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadosh shemei Rabbah be'olma divrach yirotei v'yamlich malchutei becha hayechon uvyomechon uvchayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulol meyolmaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yihitadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemed kodesha v'yichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'ami hiran v'yolma ve'ihimeruhu Amen. Ya'amod Maftir. Before calling Ron up, I should have pointed out that the Maftir begins on page 998 at verse number 20. Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed. Amen.
Ad asher yaniach Adonai Elohechem kachem yrshu gam heim et haaretz asher Adonai Elohechem natan lahem asher Adonai Elohechem natan lahem be'evir har Yordain V'shaftem ish l'rishato asher natati lachem et Yehoshua tziviti be'etahi lemor enecha haraod et kol asher hasa Adonai Elohechem l'shnei hamlachim ha'ele ken yaseh Adonai l'chol ha'malachot asher atah over shama lo tiraum ki Adonai Elohechem hu hanelcham
lachem.
Thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan לנו Torah emet v'chayei olam v'chapek nitenu baruch atah Adonai noteinu haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Yashar koach to Ron and to Bernie for the reading of the maftir. Before we bind up the Torah and cover it and put it to the side on the table over there, let's extend blessing to everyone who participated in this morning's Torah service. So if you read from the Torah or if you received an aliyah, please stand if it's comfortable for you to do so that we can direct our blessings to you and to God. מי שבירך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, ואמותינו שרה, רבקה, רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את כל אלה שעלו היום לכבוד המקום ולכבוד התורה ולכבוד השבת. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור אותם ואת כל משפחותיהם, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם, עם כל ישראל, אחיהם ואחיותיהם, ונאמר אמן. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless everyone who has risen today for the purpose of honoring God and honoring the Torah and honoring Shabbat. May the Blessed Holy One protect them. May the Blessed Holy One protect their entire family, all of their loved ones, bring blessing and success to all the works of their hands. And together, let us say, Amen. And if it's comfortable for the rest to rise, that's wonderful. If not, please do stay seated. Vezot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, Torah, thank you. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. We may be seated. Thank you very much. The Haftarah, I believe it's on page 1000.
Yes.
Yes.
For you, not me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam אשר בחר בנביאים טובים ורצה בדבריהם הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק. הזון ישעיהו בן אמוץ אשר חזה על יהודה בירושלים בימי עוזיהו יותם אחז יזקיהו מלכי יהודה. שמעו שמיים והאזיני ארץ כי אדוני דיבר. בנים גידלתי ורוממתי והם פרשו בי. ידע שור קונהו וחמור אבוס בעליו. ישראל לא ידע, עמי לא התבונן. אוי גוי חוטא, עם קבר עוון, זרע מרעים, בנים משחיתים. עזבו את אדוני, נאיצו את קדוש ישראל, נעזורו אחור. על מה תוכו עוד, תוסיפו שרה, כל ראש לחלי וכל לבב דווי. מכף רגל ויד ראש אין בו מתום, פצע וחבורה ומכה מריה, תריה. לא זורו ולא חובשו ולא רוככה בשמן. ארצכם שממה, עריכם שרופות אש, אדמתכם לנגדכם, זרים אוכלים אותה, ושממה כמהפכת זרים. בנות רבת ציון כסוכה וחרם, כמלונב ומקשה כעיר נצורה. לולי אדוני צבאות הותיר לנו שריד כמעט, כי סדום היינו לעמורה דמינו. שמעו דבר אדוני קציני סדום, האזינו תורת אלוהינו עם עמורה. למה לי רוב זבחיכם, יאמר אדוני שבעתי עולות אלים בחלב מריעים ודם פרים וכבשים, בעתודים לא חפצתי. כי תבואו לראות פניי, מי ביקש זאת בידכם רמום חצרי. לא תוסיפו הביא מנחת שווא, כתורת תועבה היא לי. חודש בשבת קרו מגרע, לא אוכל אבן va'atzara. Chad Shechem umoadechem shana nafshi hayu alai lat torach nileti neso uforishchem kapechem elim einai mikem gam kitarbu tefillah Eineni shomea yedechem damim maleu rachatzu hizabu hasiru ro'a ma'aleichem mineged einai hilu hare'a limdu heitev dirshu mishpat ashru chamods shiftu yatom rivu almana l'chun na v'nivacha yoma Adonai iniyu chateach Chata'echem kishanim kasheleg yalbinu im yadimu chatola katsemeyu im tovu ushmatem tuv haaretz tochelu v'im tama'anu umritem Cherev tu'kalu ki pi Adonai diber Echa hayta lezona kirya ne'emen mana Malayati mishpat tzedek yarlin ba biata ratzchim Kasfei hayalesigim Sareich mahu b'mayim Sarayich sorarim V'chavrei ganavim Kulo ohev shochar V'odeich shamonim Yatom lo yish Potu v'riv almana lo yavo aleihem Lachein ne'um ha'adon Adonai tziva'ot Avir Yisrael Hoi Enachem mitzarai V'inakma ne'oivai V'ashiva yadi alayech Ve'etz roch kabor sigayech V'asira kol bedilayech V'ashiva shoftayech V'arishona Yoatzayech kevat chila Acharechen Yikare lach yir hatzedek kirya ne'emana Tzion b'mishpat tzifodeh b'shaveha b'tzedakah Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzor kol olamim tzadik b'kol hadorot oel ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'yoser ha'medaber u'makayim shekol devarav emet v'tzedek ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'davarecha nidvarecha chor lo yashuf reikam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah Baruch atah Adonai Ho'el ha'ne'eman b'chol devarav Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu V'la'alu bat nefesh toshia b'meira b'yameinu Baruch ata Adonai, Nesameach Tzion b'vonecha. Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu Hanavi Avdecha, u'malchut Beit David Meshichecha, b'meira yavo b'yogel libeinu, al kisolo yeshev zar, v'lo yinkalu olecharim et kevodo, ki v'shem chatshecha nishbata lo, shelo yikbenero li'olam vo'ed, baruch ata Adonai, Magen David, al haTorah v'al havoda v'al hanavim v'al yom haShabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu liktusha v'limnucha lechavod u'letifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach u'mvorchim otach yitbarach shimcha v'fi chol chai tamid li'olam bo'ed baruch ata Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. Yasher Koach.
Yasher Koach to Bernie. He taught me everything I know.
You're not alone.
That's not true, Ron.
You taught everybody.
Would you join me on page 176, a prayer for those who serve the community? May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless the entire congregation together with all other holy congregations, they, their families, and all that is theirs, along with those who devote themselves to establish synagogues for prayer, as well as those who enter them to pray, and those who provide for their maintenance, wine for Kiddush and Havdalah, food for guests, bread for the hungry, tzedakah for the poor, and shelter for the homeless, and all who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of this community and the land of Israel. The Holy One reward them, remove sickness from them, heal them, and forgive their sins. May God bless them by making all their worthy endeavors prosper, as well as those of the entire people of Israel, their brothers and sisters, and let us say, Amen.
And will you join me at the bottom of page 178, a prayer for peace? May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world.
And the nation will not threaten nation, and the human family will not get no war.
For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love.
Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion.
Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture, I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you.
I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Let justice and righteousness flow like a mighty stream. Let God's peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea, and let us say, Amen.
Amen. I hope you've been lifting weights this week.
There's one right there, Sue, right behind you.
What?
I said I was a bodybuilder.
Oh, thanks,
Yeah,
man.
so-
Please join us for ushering on page.
181.
She doesn't have to wear glasses.
I had cataract surgery.
Nice.
Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Odalucha Sela.
Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, Ashrei ha'am sh'Adonai Eloha.
Tehillah LeDavid, Amorimcha Elohai HaMelech, V'cha Shemcha Le'olam Va'ed.
V'chol yom ha'malkecha, le'Adonai shecha le'olam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai Himolo Me'od, V'ligdato En Cheker.
Dor ledor yishabach ma'asecha, u'gvuratecha yagidu.
Hadar Kavod Hodecha, V'divrei Natecha Asicha.
Ve'ezuz noratecha yomenu, u'gdulatcha asaprena.
Zechera Tuvcha Yabi'u, V'tzedecha Yeranenu.
Chanun v'rachum Adonai, erech ha'payim u'gdal chesed.
Tov Adonai L'chol, V'rachamav Al Kol Ma'asahav. Kavod Malchut Chayim Heru, Ugvrat Adar Yedaberu.
להודיע לפני האדם גבורותיו, וכבוד האדם מלכותו.
Malchutcha Malchut Kol Amim, Omem Shadaka Bechol Dor V'Dor.
ויח אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזאת כיף לכל הכפופים.
Einei Choin Lachei Yisaberu, V'yatam Notem Lahem Edachlam B'ito.
פותח את ידיך ומשפיע בכל רצון.
Tzadik Adonai Bechol Derachav, V'chasid Bechol Ma'asav.
קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יקראו באמת.
Ritzon Ye'av Yaseh, Ve'eshavatam Yishma V'Yoshiyim.
שומר אדוני לכל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד.
Tehillah Adonai Yidapi, V'varech Kol Basar Shem Kachol Le'olam Va'ed. V'yanam Rehaya, Mi'ata Elolam. Hallelujah. Shekholah.
Yasher koach. Yasher koach. Good morning, good to see you. So we turn now to page 183, and if it's comfortable for you to do so, please rise. יחללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. הודו על ארץ ושמים, ויאמר כרם ליעמו. תהילה לאלוהו עשית לבני ישראל. Hallelujah, hallelujah, mizmor leDavid, havul Adonai b'nei, havul Adonai kavod va'oz, havul Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu Adonai behadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim. אל הכבוד יראים, אדוני על מים רבים. כל אדוני בכוח, כל אדוני בהדר, כל אדוני שובר ערבים, וישבר אדוני ירחם עליו. וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון וסיריון, כמו בין רעמים. כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יפיר ליבה, יפיר אדוני מדבר קדש, כל אדוני יחולל מעיינות, ויחשוף יערות, ובהיכלו כולו אומר כבוד. אדוני כמהו ישב, וישב אדוני מלך ליומם, אדוני יוס ליד
Kadesh Yomeinu Keketem Lai 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 Yada Lai Lai Yada Lai Lai Yada Yada Lai 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 Yada Lai Lai Shabbat Shalom and good morning and welcome to everyone who's joined us since the last time I said that. Really, it's great to have you all with us. Someone who's not been with us the past at least, I think, what's it, 1 week, maybe, a couple of weeks, is our president, Helen. Helen, a couple of weeks ago, had a bad cold and she was working hard to get better so that she could go away to be in Poland, which is why she wasn't here last week. Helen is the president. It couldn't be announced before now, but she made a presidential detour to Taiwan, and thank God all are well. Those of you who might have been following the Haftarah, whether in Hebrew or in English, if you understood what you were reading, would have seen it was a rather filled with despair. And that is not coincidental. It is lining up with where we find ourselves on the Jewish calendar. The Jewish calendar really is not so filled with doom and gloom as people like to joke about or allege. You know, there's that old joke about what? They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. And there's not nearly as much of that as people make out. Tomorrow, however, is the biggest one of them all. It really is. It's Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av, which recognizes and observes a litany of tremendous tragedies that has struck our people over millennia. Apparently, it's not just legend. Apparently, there's some historical validity to the destruction of both temples or the breaching of the walls of Jerusalem, leading to the exiles of the 2 exiles of the people, and a number of other events throughout the ages. So, bottom line, our congregation together with BHBI will, in the pattern of the way that we have observed Slichot in recent years, instead of having a service which would end around about 11 tonight, we are doing it in the morning in order to make it more conducive for people to actually attend. It will be live streaming, and I understand those who need that option. If you are able to come and be in person, please do. We need a minyan. You know, if we can't have the minyan in person, there ain't going to be nothing online. So, you know, that's how it works. So the details are out there on the wall. They're also in the newsletter which went out during the week. So that information is there. At BHBI, beginning at 9:30 in the morning. And yeah. One last announcement. On this morning's flyer with information about the parasha, on the back listed events, I've listed, no, I didn't list, but it's out there on the wall, that a number of members of our congregation have asked me at different times different questions about prayer. How do we know what we're supposed to do? Where does it come from? How much of what we're supposed to do we really have to be doing? How much could we, skip over, and that kind of thing.
So let us learn more about prayer starting in the fall. My one reluctance is to say when we should do it. So I would appreciate it if whoever is interested, and this too will be in the newsletter, would let either me or Rebecca know, yes, I want to come along and be part of the discussion, and then amongst us we can figure out what time is best. I have a few thoughts in mind. Okay, that's done with the announcements. I've mentioned to you at various times, I'm going to say it again, I was a rather awkward and shy teenager. I guess you could say as an adult too. No, okay, let's keep it to my teenage years. So I went to sleepaway camp once and realized that this was not for me. How's Ellie's doing great. Ellie, thank God, is totally unlike his father and loves sleepaway camp. Nothing could make me happier than for him not to be like me. So that's just great. So camp wasn't for me. Last night, I do not usually leave my home on Shabbat other than to come here and then to go back home again. Last night, I found myself at the invitation of the director at Camp Seneca Lake for their Shabbat service. And I have to say that the experience was wonderful, complicated, I'll get there in a moment, fascinating at many, many levels. Part of me felt like a social anthropologist, having entered a remote and disconnected world of people, disconnected from the outside world, where they have their own language and their own symbols and their own references that would make no sense in the outside world whatsoever. Just fascinating to observe how they operate. Even their Shabbat service was pretty interesting, and I've seen some Shabbat services in my time. And just to see, you know, what they included, what they left out, fascinating. What they included was a lot of songs from the 70s, 60s even. And in these songs, there's a sense almost of yearning, a sense of identifying with something strongly and trying to hold on to it with all your might because of an awareness that time pulls these things out of our grip. And so one listens to these songs, which interestingly were incorporated in a Shabbat service. And what strikes one is that here were some campers in the 70s and possibly 80s who have this very strong affiliation, and they're picking songs that they know from contemporary culture at the time, which describe their sense of love and devotion and belonging to this place, and a real reluctance to have to grow out of being there. Not wanting to have to become too old that you stop going to camp. And realizing the inevitability. And so, the one song that pops into my head is Joni Mitchell's and the seasons they go round and round, which describes the inevitability. We're all going to get older and have to leave behind part of the joys of our youth. And it really struck me that this is Shabbat Devarim. So we enter the final book of the Torah. And at this point, the narrative of this path, this journey, almost completely stops, because it's come to an end. From the beginning, the whole book starts at the very beginning, the infinite beginning. What some people might choose to call the Big Bang, what we call the beginning of creation. there isn't necessarily a conflict between those two ideas, but at the very beginning. And then we get to this guy Moses, and from Moses, there's a period of about 40 years, and then it stops. It reaches the end, and we're at that end bit. To the extent that, if you look at modern critical Bible scholars, people like Stephen Friedman, who introduce various analyses of Bibles, looking at the different books, they say that Deuteronomy is written quite a bit after the rest of the earlier parts of the Bible, and it's a reflection on everything that has come before. It's the summary of everything that has come before. And what we know is that Moses knows that his life's over. He's about to die. And this is his farewell speech to the people. And this sense of leaving something very, very special and not having the privilege, the possibility of being able to participate in its future, because Moses is not allowed to enter the land of Israel, certainly had overlaps with a summer camp experience. It's a bit of a stretch, I admit, but coming to an end, people reaching the end of their last summer at camp, knowing that they can't come back next year. They're too old. It's over for them. And it struck me as being a powerful coincidence as I sat there last night. Devarim has a sense of sadness. We've been through a lot with Moses. It hasn't all been easy or good. It's been a lot of friction. It's been a bumpy road, a difficult relationship. We shouldn't fool ourselves that just because Moses is described as the greatest prophet that Israel has ever had and ever will have, Lo kam b'Yisrael k'Moshe od navi. There will never arise again in Israel a prophet such as Moses. Just because he is great doesn't mean it's all been smooth sailing. It's been difficult. And he has to say goodbye. Goodbye, saying goodbye is, in my opinion in any case, probably the hardest thing that human beings ever have to do. Really, I don't know what's harder. And it's not pathos, but it just really gets me how he is speaking to them in terms of, can't but hear a sense of sadness and regret coming through his words. So why was I at Camp Seneca Lake last night, of all nights? This is not a camp that makes it a habit to bring a rabbi into their midst. I was there because of an unspeakable event that happened during the week that touched the lives of the Camp Seneca Lake community. 2 young women, Gillian and Lindsay Weiner of Washington, D.C., sisters something like between 2 and 4 years apart in age, who were campers at Camp Seneca Lake and who aged out of the camp within just the past couple of years, to the extent that all of the counselors at the camp there now were their friends. They grew up together in this camp. These 2 sisters died together tragically this last week. The family was renting a home at the beach on Long Island, And in the middle of the night, fire started, and 3 members of the family managed to get out, one of them even jumping from a 2nd floor window. And these 2 sisters couldn't make it. Their father, not that it makes any difference, but their father, who is the president of Washington Hebrew congregation, tried to go back in to rescue his daughters, and he couldn't make it. He couldn't get there. The fire was just impassable. And so these kids, whose lives in general are pretty complicated these days. Most kids' lives are complicated in ways that ours never were. More than 50% of campers on medication for emotional and psychiatric needs these days at this particular camp. The world's a different place. And summer camp still holds out the promise of being an escape from reality, an escape from the world that we live in. And yet this year, for the campers at Camp Seneca Lake, they were confronted by a very cruel trick of life that one cannot escape pain. That even in paradise, pain knows where to find one. Many of the younger campers never knew these 2 young women in their early 20s who died, but they saw their counselors weeping throughout the week, and it hasn't stopped. This is not something that planners of a summer camp take into account when planning for the summer. And that's why they wanted, quite unexpectedly, a rabbi to join them for Shabbat, and who was I to say no when the invitation arrived? There isn't any easy or meaningful or pithy way to sum this up or where to end. We don't invite tragedy into our lives. And I am not one who will ever tell you that we are sent suffering for a reason. You won't hear that from me, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that's how the universe works. I am of the belief, though, that there is something akin to what I'm going to get the name wrong, post-traumatic growth. That after a trauma, when sufficient time has passed and sufficient work has been done, that there is sometimes the opportunity to look back and say, how am I different? How have I grown? What have I learned? What, if anything, might I ever be able to give to others who find themselves in a similar situation? And what I saw in the midst of this horrible grief at a campsite was the workings of what we call Kahal Kadosh, a holy congregation. The holiness so utterly evident by everyone's presence for each other. The learning, the experience that grief and suffering, hopefully, one hopes, it's no guarantee, but it doesn't always have to be about utter isolation. That sometimes what can come out of it is connection. Connection with others, who might be going through the same thing, connection with others who aren't going through the same thing, but really wish they could open themselves up to totally embrace us and what we are going through. And what a gift that is when it happens. I didn't want to say to these kids, and I didn't, but they will encounter grief again because they're young. May they live long enough to live the natural course of life in which difficult things will happen again. And may this experience, instead of haunting them, and how can it do anything but haunt them, may it form some kind of foundation for them of an idea and a memory of what community can do, what community can be, how it can be there with us, to hold us, and to see us through the hardest of times so that we don't have to have the sense of going through them alone. I've recounted many times what Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said, one of the many things he said, that we as human beings are able to deal with almost anything as long as we are not dealing with them alone. And seeing this community operating last night brought it home to me that it's not just that community that operates like that, but that we too form and constitute a holy community that offers not only comfort in the midst of grief, but laughter in the midst of joy as well, without which we cannot live. And our community indeed is a kahal kadosh, for which I give tremendous thanks. Shabbat Shalom. We turn to page 184. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma divrach Yirotei v'yamlich malchutei Becha hayechon uvyomechon uvchayei dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala uvizman kahari ve'imeru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulol me'ol maya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'at v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'halal Shemei d'kodesham brichu le'elav min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amihiran b'yolma v'yihimaruhu Amen. Amidah can be found on page 185. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ופוקד ומשיח ומגן, ברוך אתה האדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נעריצך ונקדישך כסוד שיח שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר. קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ, כבודו כבודו מלא עולם, משרתיו שואלים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו, לאומתם ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו ממקומו, הוא יפן ברחמים ויחון העם יחדים שמו, ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו שנית לעיני כל חי, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור. ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. תיקנת שבת רציתי. If you are still davening, please do continue. Take as much time as you need while we turn now to page 192. No? No. Page, no. This is rather elusive. 203. There we go. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעולמה דברך ירטב ימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמה וימרו תתקבל צלותון ובאותון דכל ישראל קודם אבהון די ושמיה ואמרו יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Page 204. אין כאלוהינו, אין כאדוננו, אין כמלכנו, אין כמושיענו, מי כאלוהינו, מי כאדוננו, מי כמלכנו, מי כמושיענו. נודה לאלוהינו, נודה לאדוננו, נודה למלכנו, נודה למושיענו, ברוך אלוהינו, ברוך אדוננו, ברוך מלכנו, ברוך מושיענו. אתה הוא אלוהינו, אתה הוא אדוננו, אתה הוא מלכנו, אתה הוא מושיענו, אתה הוא שהכתירו אבותינו לפניך את קטורת הסמים. Page 205. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגופי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. כי המלכות שלך היא, ולמאה תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. please be seated. And my apologies, just one more word that I need to add to what I said earlier. Jacob Eckhouse, son of Neil and Sue, is one of the most senior leaders at Camp Seneca Lake. This summer, he grew up with these two ladies every summer. He spoke and addressed all of the campers last night in a way that I just wish that his parents could have been there to see. What a blessing this young man is to them, to his camp community, to our community, and to any community that he will ever become a part of. In the following week, members of our community, our immediate Temple Beth David community, will remember loved ones who've passed away at this time in years gone by. And they are Sam Kinnell, Norman Steinberg, Naftali Feinberg, Burton Friedman, Joe Priceman, Jay Levine, Max Kessler. My apologies, my hesitation was because some names are appearing twice on this list. Are there any other yortzites that I did not mention? Mourner's Kaddish is on page 207. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei b'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulamei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'yimaru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Cindy is going to announce.
Havdalah will not be held tonight in observance of Erev Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av services will be held tomorrow morning beginning at 9:30 a.m. at BHBI. Visit the Temple Bulletin Board for more information or visit the TBD website. The Temple Beth David Summer Picnic will be held on Sunday, August 28th at Buckland Lodge. Please take a flyer from the lobby. For more information, for opportunities to volunteer, call Carol Schott. The Jewish Movie Club will not meet on Wednesday, August 10th. Please visit the poster in the Temple lobby or the Temple website for previews of August movie selections. Rabbi Silbert will keep every Monday open between 10 and 11 a.m. just for taking your calls, but feel free to call anytime, ideally between 9 and 5 weekdays. If you need his telephone number, call the office. The next Board of Trustees meeting will be held via Zoom on Tuesday, September 13th at 7 p.m. I think there's one in August. This isn't right. There's one in August. It's like the Tuesday after this coming Tuesday. If you would like to attend as a guest, please contact the Temple office or board member for instructions. Call the office by Wednesday if you need a ride to the service. Let's see. Page 20 what? 211. I don't have it memorized, unfortunately. You are my sunshine, you are my sunshine. Bernie wants me to tell him the tune. Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra le'e Sur Chavli, Be'et Sarah, Behunisi, Omanosli, Menakosi, Beyom Ekra, Beyado, Avkid Ruchi, Be'et Isha, Be'aira, Be'imruchi, Geviati, Adonai li velo ira.
Shabbat shalom. Yes.
I wasn't going to use it unless it's just one last one. I think it's silly to have someone else read it and have it read the same thing. Second. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. And we're meeting this coming week?
Monday.
Okay.
At 7, same time, same place, same system.
Same system, that means that there is some jigsaw.
There will be. There always will be. Because I make it myself. I have, the machine. I just make the soda water and throw in the ginger ale. Nope, that's about it. Thank you.
Okay. So did I. Yeah.
No adult supervision.
It was Halloween.
No adult
Very different
supervision.
than the Halloween that my kids went to.
The whole thing was run by college kids. Israeli shooting.
The only reason I'm saying I'm
I have problems with Israeli stuff.
terrible.
Anyway, but the biggest mistake in my life is at 15 I was offered a camp scholarship and I turned it down. The camp scholarships were very rare in my school. Now everybody gets it. The idea of a camp scholarship. It was more than my father could have done. Yeah, I was 14.
Of his data.
Yeah, but I would be in the bar with those on. Okay, Sid, how you doing? I'm hanging in there. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, actually, it was very interesting from this guy. It's so famous that they had this reunion in Israel. Right. We are meeting this
You take care of the stay safe.
Oh, there she is.
But there's a complaint, so you know, like, carpal tunnel and arthritis. We didn't get a text. Probably got one like maybe 3 hours ago. No, if I walk much farther so we ended up saying, I'm going to Charlotte. So we ended up making it in Charlotte. Yes. Yeah, I'm just saying that's what happens when you feed them right. You know, you
Nobody's eating the rest of them. What is your question? If the no, that's a real, that's a reality. It's not a, it's a truth.
I went downstairs, I thought you were downstairs. I was in my sister's car. No, I live in Manhattan Square across from the ice skating rink. Well, it's a fountain now, in the winter. It's in Manhattan Square. Yeah, I live right next to the Green Place. Yeah, I love living next to it, not that I wouldn't go, but I know I can go whenever I'm going. I haven't been in like 3-4 years. The last time I went, I love it, because they have the old cab, the toys, they have the original like the old yes. And they have these type their own trail message. Yes, they have a trail typewriter and you can type a message. It's awesome. They had little house on the corner set up. So I was acting like little house on the corner. I love it. And then we went on Sesame Street. And then when he's the postmaster general, you'll know why. Right now, Langston is obsessed with monsters. So he is so filthy, but today he was filthy. In the dirt, and he has a pit bull, just a little pit bull, filthy at the end of the day. They just roll around with trunks on them. Yeah. He's obsessed. And my sister is pregnant. She's having a girl. Yeah, so Langston goes, they were like, are you happy you're going to have this symbol? He says, am I going to share my gospel? Yeah. So she's going to have a girl. Yeah, he's 3. He knows how to solve church life. My sister lives perfectly. So she did not stick it all with him. And this started my life. Okay. No, he is. She's still. It's very good. My mother's name is girlfriend. I don't know. It's what they call them, buggy, mine, whatever. And where? Exactly. Well, exactly. You want to make sure, okay. Yeah, no pills. Shabbat shalom, handsome. Okay, Mr. Teenager. Lovely. And he's a handsome kid. Well, you know, there's a lady in Africa, they call her Mama Africa, she has 30-something children, and she has a condition where that's all she can have is multiple. So she has 30 children. Yeah. So I'm ready. I haven't been outside. I thought you were outside. Did you get you some vegetables? I'm gonna make soup, so it's good. I got a shopper coming. Show her your way.
Yes. She's kosher, 50% and the meat.
I don't know, that's why I used to watch these man videos with kids in
Well,
the
you know what?
really bad, because as soon as I sat down to watch, it was so down.
Brown steaks, we would get half, wing and spaghetti, you know, and, we'll go to Libby's for the last. Not the freshest, but I still like the steaks.